Picture this. It's the year 1350, and you're standing in a dimly lit room with a straw mattress, a flickering candle, and a suspicious draft creeping through the walls. If you think your tiny apartment or noisy neighbors are rough, let me introduce you to the medieval bedroom. A place where privacy was a myth, romance was a battlefield, and the rules were so bizarre they'd make your head spin. Welcome to a world where your bed wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a stage for drama, superstition, and some downright weird customs. Ready to dive into the strangest bedroom rules of the Middle Ages? Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. Let's start with the basics. Medieval bedrooms weren't the cozy sanctuaries we imagine today. Forget memory foam mattresses or blackout curtains. If you were a peasant, your bedroom was likely a corner of a one-room hut, shared with your entire family, a few chickens, and maybe a stray dog. The bed, a pile of straw, or, if you were lucky, a lumpy sack stuffed with wool. For the wealthy, things were fancier. Think four-poster beds draped in velvet, but even then, the bedroom was less about comfort and more about power, status, and survival. And the rules governing what happened in these spaces? Oh, they were anything but normal. Take the concept of privacy, for starters. Today, you might lock your door, crank up some music, and call it a night. In the Middle Ages, a locked door was a luxury most people couldn't afford. Bedrooms were public spaces, especially for the elite. Nobles often entertained guests, held court, or even gave birth in their bedrooms, with servants, relatives, and random onlookers crowding around. Imagine trying to catch a nap while your cousin, a bard, and three nosy maids are arguing over who gets the last slice of bread. One famous example comes from 14th century France, where noblewoman Marguerite de Carouge reportedly gave birth in her bedroom with a dozen witnesses, including her husband's squire, just to prove the baby was legitimate. Talk about performance pressure. But it wasn't just the lack of privacy that made medieval bedrooms strange. The rules about who could share a bed and when were governed by a mix of religion, superstition, and social hierarchy. The Catholic Church had a lot to say about what went down between the sheets. Sex, for instance, was heavily regulated. The church dictated that married couples could only get intimate on certain days, avoiding holy days, Lent, Advent, or even Sundays in some cases. Break these rules and you risked divine punishment, or at least a stern lecture from your local priest. One medieval guide, the Penitential of Theodore, warned that couples who got frisky on a forbidden day could face penance, like fasting for weeks. Imagine explaining that to your spouse. Sorry, honey, no romance tonight, it's St. Swithin's Day. Superstition also played a huge role. People believed the bedroom was a hotspot for evil spirits, demons, or even witches trying to sneak in and cause mischief. To protect themselves, many slept with charms under their pillows, like a sprig of rosemary or a blessed amulet. In some villages, couples would sprinkle salt around the bed to ward off bad vibes. One bizarre tale from 15th century England describes a woman who refused to sleep with a knife under her mattress, convinced it would keep demons at bay. Spoiler, it didn't help when her neighbor's pal wandered in and ate her bedding. And then there's the matter of who or what shared your bed. If you were a peasant, you might be cuddling up with your siblings, parents, or even livestock to stay warm. Wealthy households weren't much better. Nobles often shared their beds with servants or companions for security, a practice called bedfellowship. King Edward I of England, for example, regularly slept with his trusted knights nearby, not for anything scandalous, but to ensure no one stabbed him in the night. And don't even get me started on the bed bugs. These weren't just a nuisance, they were practically roommates. Medieval texts describe people waking up covered in bites, yet they just shrugged on and carried on. Can you imagine tweeting about that today? Just another night with my 47 bedbug roommates. #medieval problems. What makes these rules so fascinating is how they reflect the medieval mindset. Bedrooms weren't just for sleeping. They were a microcosm of society, where class, religion, and fear of the unknown collided. For the 18 to 35 crowd, it's a reminder of how far we've come, and how thankful you should be for your IKEA mattress and Netflix. But we're just getting started. Let's dive deeper into the bedroom rules that governed love, lust, and everything in between. Now that you're picturing a medieval bedroom, straw everywhere, zero privacy, and a cow possibly chewing on your blanket, let's talk about the real drama, love and intimacy. If you think modern dating is complicated, try navigating the medieval rules for what could or couldn't happen in the bedroom. Spoiler alert, it was less about passion and more about following a rule book thicker than a castle wall, with the Catholic Church acting as the ultimate relationship police. First, let's tackle the Church's obsession with controlling every aspect of marital intimacy. The medieval bedroom was practically a battlefield where couples had to dodge a calendar full of no-go days. The Church banned sex during Lent, 40 days, Advent, another 40 days, Sundays, feast days, and even when a woman was pregnant or menstruating. One 13th century priest, Thomas of Chabham, wrote that couples who ignored these rules risked giving birth to deformed children or inviting divine wrath. Imagine trying to keep track of all that while also dodging bed bugs and your nosy in-laws. Some couples, desperate to stay on God's good side, would hang a church calendar by their bed as a reminder. Talk about a mood killer. But it wasn't just about when you could get intimate, it was also how. The Church had strict rules about acceptable positions, believing that anything too creative was sinful. The only approved position was, you guessed it, the missionary style, because it was seen as the least animalistic. Anything else could land you in hot water with your priest. In one bizarre case from 14th century Germany, a couple was hauled before a church court for unnatural acts in the bedroom, though the records coyly avoid specifics. The punishment? Public shaming and a hefty fine. Suddenly, swiping left on a bad Tinder date doesn't seem so bad, does it? For the unmarried, the rules were even stricter. Premarital sex was a big no-no, and the consequences could be brutal. In some towns, women caught in the act faced public humiliation, like being paraded through the streets in a shame cart. Men, meanwhile, often got off with a slap on the wrist because medieval society loved its double standards. One wild story from 15th century London tells of a woman named Alice who was caught sneaking around with a local baker. She was forced to walk through town with a sign labeling her a harlot, while the baker just paid a small fine and went back to kneading dough. Fair? Not even close. But let's not forget the weirdest bedroom rule of all, the public consummation. In noble households, consummating a marriage wasn't always a private affair. To ensure the marriage was official and the bride wasn't faking it, witnesses, sometimes including family members or priests, would hang out nearby to confirm the deed was done. In 1444, when Margaret of Scotland married the future Louis XI of France, courtiers reportedly stood outside the bedroom listening for proof of consummation. Imagine trying to perform under that kind of pressure. No wonder some couples bribed witnesses to fake the report. Superstitions added another layer of absurdity. Many believed that the timing of conception could determine a child's fate. For example, some medieval texts claimed that babies conceived on a full moon were destined to be strong, while those conceived during a storm might be cursed. Couples would consult astrologers or even priests to pick the perfect night. One English noblewoman, Lady Eleanor Cobham, reportedly paid a fortune to an astrologer in 1430 to ensure her child would be a boy. Spoiler, it didn't work, and she later got in trouble for dabbling in witchcraft. Talk about a bad bedroom decision. What's wild is how these rules shaped people's lives. The Church's grip meant that love was less about passion and more about duty, strategy, and avoiding eternal damnation. For young viewers today, it's a stark reminder of how much freedom we take for granted. But the medieval bedroom wasn't just about restrictions. It was also a place where people found ways to bend the rules. Let's explore how they pushed back against the chaos. So, we've seen how medieval bedrooms were governed by a bizarre mix of church rules, superstitions, and nosy neighbors. But here's the thing. People back then were just as human as we are today. They loved, lusted, and found sneaky ways to dodge the rules, even if it meant risking a public shaming or a demon sneaking under their bed. Let's dive into how medieval folks rebelled against these bedroom restrictions, the quirky rituals they followed, and what their wild world can teach us modern folks chillin' with our weighted blankets and white noise machines. First, let's talk about the rebels. Despite the church's iron grip, some couples said, "Forget this," and did things their way. Secret trysts were surprisingly common, especially among the lower classes who had less to lose. In 14th century Italy, a couple named Giovanni and Lucia were caught sneaking into a barn for some forbidden fun during Lent. Their punishment? A fine and a few days of fasting. But Giovanni's defense was legendary. He told the priest, "God made love, not calendars." Bold move, Giovanni. Even nobles got in on the action. Court records from 15th century France describe a knight who bribed a priest to look the other way so he could spend the night with his mistress. The bribe? A barrel of wine. Priorities, right? Then there were the sneaky ways people worked around the church's rules without breaking them outright. Some couples used loopholes, like claiming they accidentally got intimate on a forbidden day. Others relied on aphrodisiacs, think herbal potions or ground-up stag antlers, believing they could boost their chances of conception on an approved night. One medieval recipe book suggests mixing wine with mandrake root to inflame desire. Sounds like a medieval version of a questionable energy drink, and I'm not sure I'd trust it. Rituals were another big part of the medieval bedroom. Before hopping into bed, many couples performed elaborate routines to ensure good luck or ward off evil. In England, it was common to sprinkle holy water on the bed to keep demons away. In Germany, some brides would sleep with a piece of iron under the pillow to ensure fertility. One particularly weird ritual involved placing a loaf of bread under the bed to absorb bad spirits. A 13th century story from Yorkshire tells of a couple who forgot to remove the bread, only to find it nibbled by rats the next morning. They took it as the sign of good luck, because apparently rats were less scary than demons. For the wealthy, the bedroom was also a stage for showing off. Nobles spent fortunes on elaborate bed frames carved with religious scenes or family crests, not just for comfort, but to flex their status. In 1390, the Duke of Burgundy reportedly had a bed so massive it took 8 servants to move it. The catch? It was so heavy that it collapsed during a particularly lively party, leaving the Duke red-faced and his guests gossiping for weeks. Bedrooms were also where alliances were sealed. Think arranged marriages or political deals whispered between the sheets. One chronicler noted that a 15th century English lord negotiated a truce with a rival while lounging in bed, surrounded by velvet curtains and a dozen candles. Talk about multitasking. What's fascinating is how these rules and rituals reveal the medieval obsession with control over bodies, souls, and even the future. But they also show the resilience of human desire. People found ways to love, laugh, and live, even under the weight of superstition and scrutiny. For us today, it's a reminder that humans have always craved connection, no matter how many priests or bedbugs stood in the way. So, what can we take away from this wild trip through medieval bedrooms? First, be thankful for your private room, your clean sheets, and the fact that no one's checking your calendar before you Netflix and chill. Second, it's a humbling look at how far we've come in terms of personal freedom and comfort. The medieval bedroom was a place of chaos, creativity, and courage, where people navigated love and life against all odds. Next time you're scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., spare a thought for the folks who slept with a knife under their pillow, just in case a demon or a cow showed up. Want to dive deeper into the weird world of the Middle Ages? Drop a comment with the strangest medieval rule you've heard about, or hit that subscribe button to uncover more historical secrets. Maybe next time we'll explore what medieval bathrooms were like. Trust me, it's even grosser than you think.